We are live. Welcome back to another week of Quarantine with a K. If you're here for the first two-ish minutes of the stream, you got to see the new look, which took me longer than I care to admit, but I did upload a time-lapse of it on this very channel, so if you want to see my art, you can go do that. But that's not what we're here to talk about today, because as time starts to run out, because as far as I know, I'll be going back to school in August. These are the last few weeks of the show. Interesting song indeed, Walmer, and it'll make sense whenever you guys see who our guest is this week, because as promised, we have new nonsense, new guests, so let's jump right into it, because I'm sure this combo is going to run long. Welcome back to the studio, an old friend, an old guest, someone you've seen twice before, I think. Once on a solo episode, once with another friend of mine. Where are you? Rafael Aragon, welcome to the show. All right, welcome.
Oh, sorry. I'm still like I'm like watching the stream as it's happening.
As it's
there you go.
Yeah, there's a bit of a delay on the stream. I think it's like 5 minutes or so on desktop.
I really
Or
can't
5
do
seconds.
that. It's like it's not helpful because I'm waiting for the 15 seconds or whatever to catch up to me. And the other thing is I want to like comment and like things, but I just realized that my Google account on my desktop is signed into my dad's account and
Well, I
not
mean,
mine.
you can just respond out loud as if you were a professional streamer.
You know what? That makes a lot of sense. Pretty chill char. All right, so
So
hello.
welcome
Good
back.
to hear from you
Yeah,
all.
I was gonna say you're lucky that the show is just off the cuff on my channel, because if it was on the station, I would have had to probably censor all of it. Not because anyone probably speaks Spanish, but just because since I'm in charge of the station, I need to reflect well on me. So I'll allow it here only because I have to mute it in post because copyright. But
I think it's gonna reflect so poorly on myself, but
you're a free agent now. You're tied to no bounds by WECS.
yeah. Honestly, no, I love my job here now, like my official job. I'm still doing contracting work, so like
Right.
nobody can really tell me anything in that regard. But
Uh-huh.
also like the work we do with Freedom, it's like was like they the organization itself is just so like it's so dope, so friendly, and so like free to let us do and say the things that we feel or want to say
That's
without
really
like
cool.
much in terms of repercussions. Yeah,
I
yeah,
feel
it's
like
really
that's
dope.
something they push for, like kind of humanizing y'all.
All right. I just want to start by saying that Carla was supposed to be drinking with me, but she's not because she's whack. I'm just kidding.
I am a child of God. I'm drinking water in a Warp Tour cup that my sister got me from 2015, and it matches my green screen. Green screen.
Bless. Why are you not utilizing this green screen?
Because since it's not actually a green screen, it reflects light like really poorly. So like around me will be a halo of static, which I don't mind. I think it's an aesthetic, but Charlotte in particular told me that it looked dumb. So I was like, all right, I'll mess with it later.
You gotta Bob Ross that shit and just like embrace the fuckery
That's what
and
I
just be like, it's
had,
just part of
dude.
my aesthetic.
That's what I had, and I had it like all
The shimmery
pastel and cloud
nonsense.
looking, so it looked like deliberate. But even
Yo.
so, I was like, whatever. I'll mess with the key later because she is right, and that's only because I have so many like contrasting light sources, and then if I turn off the background lights, it like absorbs the light, so it's even worse. So I'm still
I
messing
hear
with
you.
it.
You're gonna get it. You're gonna get it right. You're gonna have your whole studio one day.
Hopefully. Um, so speaking of studio, the digital studio that you guys saw at the beginning is all based on stuff that I have in real life decorating. And I was gonna ask you, did you recognize stuff because you'd seen how I had the suite decorated before?
Oh, okay. Well, I see your guitar,
Yeah.
and let's see
Hold on, let me switch
the
to the BRB screen so you can see the full studio.
yeah, the ice, the danger falling ice.
Do you want to
My
tell the
favorite kind
story
of
of
ice
this?
when that shit is falling.
We
Abolish
said that
them
my
bitches.
favorite way to see ice is falling from the roof.
As high stories as possible.
Oh my gosh.
Yes. All
We
right,
have.
hold on. Let's see what else I
Oh
can
yeah, you can see
pinpoint.
what you recognize first, and then we'll
Are
go
those
over it anyway.
candles? Like
Uh,
the black, red, white? Oh no,
No,
that's
that's
paint.
paint because we had the
Yeah,
paint on the
yeah.
shelves.
Yes, yes. A camera,
Hmm.
which is new, right? I don't remember seeing a camera.
No,
The
we when I
headphones.
borrowed your camera, we had it on the shelf, and so I replaced
Oh,
that
yeah, yes.
concept with my camera. So I traced my camera onto that.
Bless. Yeah, I don't think I can really recognize much else though. Like, Jesus, I feel like it's been
So
so long now. This is not
at the
cool.
very top in the center, and I wish Fio was in the chat. She might be. I don't know if she's commenting. She usually watches it later though. But
Hmm.
we had a bottle of jarritos, the grapefruit one, with fairy lights inside of it, the grapes that I bought at the dollar store, the one decoration I ever bought, and the little sunflower and butterfly that we took from the Freedom Banquet.
Dead.
And I think it was you that put it on the top shelf in our suite, and so that's just where I've like commemorated that entire top shelf of just our nonsense
My
decorations.
question is, why is Astarock not up there?
That stupid rock does not belong on the shelf.
Oh my god.
This kid one time, I like the quarantine with a K format because we can literally just talk about anything. There's no time constraint either. So if it goes over, it goes over. If we run out of things to talk about in 5 minutes, that's the show for this week. But the stupid rock, bro.
All right, thanks.
So
Good night.
this
I'm
kid,
tired. No, I'm just kidding.
this kid brought a rock and he just knocks on the door and he's like, "Hey, I brought you guys something so you can
I
decorate better."
Ironically, I christened it Astarock.
Which, would you like to explain?
Oh, it's like a play on Astaroth, which is supposed to be like one of the demon kings of hell or something. I just like fucking with Carla because she's Christian
This is a good follow up to last week because me and Monica
and
talked about our belief systems.
yeah, no, I love messing with that kind of stuff. And honestly, like people, I think people who are believers in that kind of those kinds of things are always like, "Oh my God, don't play with that. Bad things are gonna happen." Blah blah
Yeah.
blah. I just think bad things have been happening to me all my life, so I'm just like, fuck it, I might
Have
as
you ever
well. Like,
considered why it might be a continuing
I'm
trend that never
no, like this
ended?
this began before I started digging around. So I was like, I mean, if I'm gonna receive the punishment, I might as well dick
You know
around
what
and
that
have some
was, bro? That
fun.
was preemptive karma.
No.
But see, and it was interesting because you always like delved like way into like the lore of like all of these different like mythologies and beliefs, and I entertain it because it's interesting. Like, why do
It's
people think
beautiful,
that
I
way?
think.
And like I'll admit I got into it just like through like books and stuff, but mostly when I went through like my phase watching Supernatural. And so like I'll
Uh,
watch it and I'll take it like con criterio and I'm just like, all right, cool, somebody believes that. Not for me. Moving on. But I think you started bringing it up because there was one conversation where it was just excessive and I was like, bro, you're gonna get smited. And like I quoted Bruce Almighty to you. And as of that day, that was my biggest mistake because I never could escape
Smite me, oh mighty smiter.
it.
I remember this story my dad tells me that he heard somewhere else. I don't remember where, but like these two kids, they're both like young and being rebellious, and they're like, we don't want to do anything with religion, and they're like proclaim themselves atheists,
Yeah.
and they're outside, and it's the older brother and a younger brother, and they're dicking around, and the thunder is happening and the lightning, and the oldest brother he screams out into like the sky. He's like, "Is that all you got? Is that all you got? Come get me, bitch!" Blah blah blah. He's like cursing him out, and his little brother comes up and he's like, "Bro, chill out. Like, what if he is real, man?" That was Carlo with me. He's like, "Bro, chill
You
out,
gonna
boy,
get
chill
got,
out."
homie. Like, see, because
Yeah.
people usually will talk about it. You were like actively welcoming it into your life, and I'm like, see, I wouldn't mind this if you didn't live across the hall.
You remember I made a sigil in your house, and then I like I don't know where I accidentally cut myself with something. I think it was my knife. Oh, I got a new knife, by the way, for all the
Sit.
viewers. It's beautiful. It's a Smith and Wesson. I like it. But it was time
Really,
for
this
a new
channel
one, I
is not yet
think.
monetized.
But yeah, I accidentally cut myself, and I was like, oh fuck, the sigil's complete. Like, there's a blood sacrifice.
Disgusting. I hate it.
Good God. No, but I was saying, like, honestly, I dick around with a lot of that stuff, but it is really. Sorry, I am drinking, so I apologize for all the burps. But it is really, like, honestly interesting. I do have respect for people's beliefs and all that stuff, and I like to read into the Bible. There's a lot of really beautiful like moral lessons. There's a lot of interesting, really cool stories. But just like the Bible has stuff, like other religions have other things too, and it's just interesting, I think, to study. Today we were at Stone Mountain, and I got this pamphlet from, and it's in Spanish,
Uh-huh.
but it's from, I guess they're Hindu,
Right.
uh, and they like, I love their like their ideology. It's super cool. I mean, here I'll read a little bit of it. It's like, and this will be in Spanish, so I'm sorry for your English only speaking listeners. Get smart.
Oh
No, I'm just
God.
fucking with you. But it it says it's like somos almas espirituales vivientes, somos todos originalmente entidades conscientes de Krishna, pero debido a nuestra asociación con la materia desde tiempo inmemorial, nuestra conciencia ahora está ahora contaminada por la atmósfera material.
I feel
En
that,
este
Charlotte.
concepto contaminado de la vida, todos estamos tratando de explotar los recursos de la naturaleza material, pero en realidad nos estamos volviendo más y más enredados en sus complejidades. Like, that's just the beginning of it. You know, there's so much more to this little pamphlet. There's this guy on the back. I think, like, you know, I'm not religious, but I think that, like, when people dedicate to learning just anything and exploring it and trying to understand it better, they gain wisdom,
Right.
and then they write their holy books. And if you are seeking wisdom, holy books are definitely a place where you can get it. Um, that's just my take on things, I
This is
guess,
a
for now.
good segue into something I wanted to ask too, because you grew up Christian, didn't you? Because one of our chosen
Mm,
topics is kind of changing, like as you grow and like as you go through life and encounter different circumstances, and like what makes up your formative years.
yeah, yeah. No, I did. I grew up Christian, and I think like when I was like 12 or something, I was very. I mean, I was an edgy 12-year-old. You know, I was very critical of like religion and
So green
Christianity
screen, amen.
specifically because that's where I had come from. And then I grew out of like the being thinking that being an asshole was cool phase, and I started respecting people's beliefs more. I think, and then I started to appreciate some of the benefits that I gain from Christianity or from being involved in the church, you know, like if we're talking about from a sociological standpoint, like really being part of that kind of community is very beneficial to like a small child's social emotional development. So I feel like there's a lot that I gain in that regard. I was talking to my dad too, and I was like, I think that I grew up poor in kind of shitty neighborhoods, and a lot of my friends who didn't go to church, the people that they had to look up to were like, you know, not necessarily the most and I hate to say like not good people because I'm sure they were good people, just like in that.
I think your connection's cutting out because you're frozen on my screen.
Fuck,
Oh
did
wait,
I
I
lose
can hear
all
you.
that I just said?
Yeah, you stopped at. There are people that blink, so we'll never know what type of people they were.
No. Oh, here. I was saying the people that like eyes of the law are seen as criminals, and I was saying fuck the law and what it sees people as, you know. But ultimately, like, it's not a life path that kind of leads to healthy
Right.
like ends, right? So like you see a drug dealer or somebody or like a narco, all the little kids who grew up poor in Mexico like want to be narcos because that's what they perceive as success. And I think I was involved in the church, and when I was like 4 or 5, I was like, I want to be a pastor because the people who I saw who were in power and who were successful and who were respected by the community were the church leaders, and that kind of drove me to want to like present myself in a certain way and behave in a certain way, speak in a certain way. um, and honestly, maybe that made all the difference. I don't know, but
The road less
the whole
traveled.
belief aspect,
Yeah.
you know, no, I don't even think it's the road less traveled. It's just that like
No,
my
I get it.
mother was so heavily involved in it that like um, that it just it had a big influence on me
Yeah.
that it might have not had on other people.
I think it's come up
I
on
mean,
the
I'm
show
still a shithead,
before.
you know, so
Well,
it didn't help that much, but
I think it's come up on the show before, and not to just bring up old topics and kind of become a reaction channel, but it's come up before that it's what is it, nature versus nurture, and like whether people are born
oh,
like inherently good, evil slash selfish slash whatever, and it's interesting whenever this comes up, and not to talk religion again like we did last week, although that was also a weird tangent. But it's interesting how it affects people's lives and how people perceive it. Because for me, on the other hand, like all of the negativity that I saw within religion, I just kind of took to see like, all right, this is an example of who not to be. And I know it's kind of controversial between like Catholicism and literally everyone else. But like the idea of having saints and sainthood, like to me, that's a positive thing because it's showing you people who lived like good, like proper lives. It's like we're never gonna be those people, but
Yeah.
they existed at some point. So like it's something you can do if you really wanted to.
You should,
It
yeah,
kind
and
of
you should strive
humanizes
to
that
behave in that way.
aspect of it. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think my buzzword
I
for
think
today is humanize.
humanize, 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 humanize.
Yeah,
I think in the regard of like saints and stuff, I mean, like I grew up in Protestant Christian churches, right? So the concept of having anybody else but like Jesus Christ, the Lord God, Savior of
yeah.
the world, was like really frowned upon. And based on like biblical texts, it's like, especially in the Old Testament, it was like, don't have any other idols or gods or figures or anything before the Lord your God, because your God's a jealous God, which is kind of bullshit. But like,
Yeah.
uh,
See, I hated that
and
type of
and I feel like
teaching.
the angels are kind of like a cop out, because it's like
Right?
every other religion was polytheist, and so Hebrew Jewish people were monotheistic. Oh my God, it's
Yeah.
like so revolutionary. We're so fucking hipster or something. I don't know. But I'm probably gonna like catch it like you're so anti-Semitic or something. But it's the hot takes that get
The
you the
podcast
views. So
welcomes debate. I enjoy discussion as long as y'all are civil about it.
no, no, like no, I'm not anti-Semitic. Like no, hell no. I
We know.
don't support people who are like that. But essentially, what I'm trying to say is that like they're like we're monotheistic, but then you see like all of the angels, and I don't even know, like it depends how you want to understand it, like every angel has its name, but it can be like a form of God, or it can be like an extension of God.
So I don't know if this came
And
up
then
on
that
this.
just bleeds back into Hinduism, where it's like if all the angels are a part of God and then we're a part of God,
Are
it's
we
like
all
what we
God?
talked about. I feel like we spoke about this in one of our
We
in like
spoke
the
about this
first
in
interview
your
that we
first
did,
episode.
about how like if in the beginning there was God and it was just God and nothing else, what did he make the universe and everything in it out of? It's like,
Yeah.
well, out of himself,
Yeah.
because he was the only thing that existed. And so in some ways, like you can see how every religion, if you believe in a God, every religion you can find like grains of truth in all of them. um
It came
which
up
is
with.
also why I don't like claim to say I claim to say I'm an atheist anymore. You keep trying to like butt in, but I'm just like, oh, I also thought about something else,
Your train of
which is
thought is
why
nonstop.
it's nonstop. But there are no breaks on this train.
I think you
But
said like your last episode you were an optimistic skeptic or something.
or like an agnostic or something like that. Like
Yeah.
honestly, I don't even put labels on it anymore. In
Labels
the
are for
same way,
soup
like
camps at Avril Lavigne.
I feel like that makes me sound so fucking like I don't know, some kind of way that I don't want to come out like. But like a lot of times I think that certain things that people want to put labels on, for me it's like I don't oh, I'm just reading some comments.
Yeah.
Interesting stuff, but I'll get to the comments later. For me, I don't think like, so say sexuality, everybody wants to label their specific vein of like what they're attracted to and what they're not attracted to. And for me, it's always been like, hey, who I engage with sexually is between me and that person, like
Right.
I don't need to define myself outwardly to anybody else. But at the same time, like I'm not going to shit on other people for wanting to define themselves, because maybe that makes them feel more whole, or makes them feel a sense of like, I don't know, anything, whatever positive thing they gain from it, like more power to them, just
That's a great
in a
segue
personal
to
sense.
Amen's comment. Because
Oh,
she
what was
says,
that?
interesting because Christianity considers itself a correction of Judaism and Islam considers itself a clarification of Christianity, and they all change their definition slash explanation of God's being, which is perfect
Oh,
because, like I said, one of the main things I wanted to talk about in this episode was how we define certain terms. Um, and to me, that right there is hypocritical on all parts, right? Because for you to claim that every other religion is nonsense, but if they all have like the same central one God, like are you just trash talking one of God's personalities, or what's up? Because I don't know if this came up on the show
That labels
last
comment,
week.
sorry.
Yeah. Or with Monica, just after we were talking just like about what we'd mentioned on the show, but I said that I don't have a problem with Greek mythology existing if it ends up being true after all, because how do we know that there wasn't like the one central god that just branched out into like, should I make some powerful beings? No, they're too messy. Let me just make some with no powers that just like to farm and build cities and stuff.
I have my whole other like long spiel theory about that, and aliens and like,
I want to get
super
you,
crazy
Monica, and
shit.
Eamon on an episode to discuss theories then, because that would be a good
Yo,
one.
hell yeah. No, I really like what Eamon said about labels. I think that, yeah, that's true. And honestly, like, I think if you feel like you need to find a community and you haven't found one, and you want to be accepted or like embraced, then yeah, like having a label will definitely help you find other people who
But do you
are
think
like you
a label is
and like-minded.
necessary? Can you
I
not
don't think
just
it's
interact with
necessary, but I
people?
think you're right. But I think if people want to, for the sake of facilitating finding like-minded people or people who are like you, and also like Eamon said, I don't know if alien is Eamon like I don't want to use the wrong pronouns.
Eamon's a
Uh,
girl. She's one of my roommates.
okay, if Eamon, if she,
Eamon, we're not
what you
talking
said,
astrology.
bro, we can do it all. Let's do it all.
I
No,
thought
wait,
we
all
left
right, now, one at a
astrology
time
with
though.
podKast with
Otherwise,
a
we're
K.
gonna.
This is the new show.
Otherwise, we won't get anywhere. But
Yeah.
essentially, the idea of like asserting yourself, I think, is important too, especially if you're a member of a marginalized community or if people have been shitting on you. And the other thing is like, if people define you, then they kind of like you're subjugating yourself to their definition of you and kind of giving them a certain verbal power over you.
Yeah.
And so I think it's dope when people label themselves and assert themselves, like she said, and say like, I am this, and this, is who I am, what I am, and I
This
can
came up
stand in it.
a few weeks ago, though. Whenever you create a space, and this was in a different context, of course, and this we were talking about diversity in the workplace, but when you create a place for yourself, you open the door for people who disagree with you to kind of pigeonhole you into that space alone.
Ooh.
So
It's a
it's
struggle.
tricky because people are complex and life is complex. There's no right or wrong answer to anything. It's just that, with anything you do, there will be pushback. And the best you can do to navigate something is to address it in the way that, like, is inarguable with. That's something that I loved speech and debate team for, just like a weird little tangent. But, like, you learn how to make your argument in a way that you can't debate.
Yeah. I want to say something else about like labels is the reason why I think I'm hesitant to labeling is because, like, say on Facebook, I'm a member of a couple different groups, and some of them are like pan something, and others are like buy something or blah blah blah, and people like try to like shit on each other. It's like, bi people are transphobic because they only like men and
Right,
women, and then bi people will be like, no, we're not transphobic. We like our gender and other genders.
right.
Like that's like the where the
That's
bi
the
comes in,
discourse.
and then like pan people are transphobic because blah blah blah, and it's just like ultimately like, why are you accusing each other of being transphobic when like you're really not, unless you are. Like, if you're transphobic, then you are, and if you're not, then like label yourself whatever you want to, and let people label themselves what they want to. And that's not the fault of the person labeling themselves, though. People will be like, will be phobic anyway. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm gonna say. What I was saying. Yeah, like, if you're transphobic, you're transphobic. Like, it doesn't have anything to do with whether you want to label yourself as pan or as bi or whatever it is that you want to label yourself as. It's like, I don't like that sometimes the labels breed like awesome.
Good to know,
Thank you,
Amen.
Amen.
Thank you
I
for
appreciate
informing
it.
me after a whole year of
Yeah.
knowing you.
You never asked, see? That's your
It
issue.
never
You
came
gotta
up.
ask people their pronouns.
What a punch you.
Ask your friends. You never asked me my pronouns, fake. No,
You
just kidding. I just
introduced
use
you.
my
Oh
hang
my god, I'm
pronouns.
not having. Stop playing devil's advocate. I swear to God. Having you and Tara
Yeah.
on an episode would be chaotic nightmare.
No, I don't enjoy always playing devil's advocate, especially on shitty takes. I feel like
Yeah,
people use that as an excuse to voice their like bullshit, like
yeah.
phobic ass things without really like taking on the responsibility of like saying, oh yeah, I'm a
Yeah.
fucking racist or
No, but
something.
something we did used to like to do was to just pick a topic and debate it from all sides, like purposefully taking different angles on it.
Because I think it's important to like try to exercise your mind in a way that
Yeah.
you are looking for a better argument from your opposition, because when you find a better argument than the one that they're making and then you destroy it, it's like
You
they
make
have no
yourself
grounds to stand
inarguable with
on.
that, and that's what we
Yeah,
need to. Well, that's what I wish more people would do anyway.
yeah, that or like absolute violence, like with
Um,
Nazis.
going on what yeah, going on what Charlotte said though. Some people feel more uncomfortable with a label than without it, and then Eamon said it depends on what people think the meaning of label is, which goes back to my original. I don't know if it was my original concept in this episode, but in my mental dialogue, which is that you can't really expect anyone to define yourself, not even yourself, because that changes like as you grow, as you change, as you go through life.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Um,
I'm reading what Eamon said.
yeah, I'm reading the comments. I like to interact with like the viewers. I think it makes for a more interesting
Yeah,
conversation because you're welcoming more perspectives, which is dope.
yeah.
Uh,
Which is something that we'd wanted on the podcast for a while, which is why I think I'm gonna stream from the station if I even get to go back to the station, because I talked to my boss and he doesn't even know what's happening yet. So that'll be fun to figure out.
yeah, yeah. But anyway, I guess moving beyond that,
Yeah,
I don't
we
know
were
how we
gonna
got
talk about
to those labels from
well, because it's a part of like
religion.
I guess your formative experience. Like those are ideas that you built
Had to
based
wrestle
on
with.
based on how life shaped you. So obviously religion shapes how you think because we're all exposed to it when we're kids, whether it's believing in it or not believing in it. Like we're all exposed to it from a certain position, and then we choose what to do with it. And I think what also affects who you become is the people that you're surrounded with, like as you grow up. And I know we've discussed this before about what we think about it, and I don't know if I think this came up when in the episode where we talked about diversity. Like, I grew up going to a school that was 80% non-white, so my experience of the world was a lot different from a lot of people in the South that go to very like country white racist schools. So like if you went to the school that I went to, it's very hard for you to come out of that a racist just because you're not you're not exposed to that mindset. Like the teachers, the students, everyone is very much like equality for all type mindset. Like I remember we in sixth grade we watched the news in social studies
I don't
every day
agree
and
with that
discussed it.
entirely.
And I know you don't. We've discussed this
Yeah,
in
we've
person
had this
before.
argument
Yeah.
multiple times because I think that it's also a cop out to say just because I grew up in, because that's kind of like the whole argument is like, yeah, the North is not as racist as the South. It's like, okay, I can understand that the South is explicitly racist in a lot of ways, and
Oh,
that shit is
there's
damaging.
racist people
But
in the
like,
north. Let me tell
bro,
you.
there's fucking like what are you talking about? And like just because you, yeah, and there are people who come out
Yeah.
racist even though they're like explicitly racist, but
Right.
even then, even people who are like, even people who would say personally themselves like, no, I'm not a racist, and then you like watch them, like some of the Karens that you see
Oh my
on
god.
Facebook on videos like that go viral, like they're like, oh my god, I'm not racist, blah blah, I just, you know, but like because of the society that we grow up in, even black people have internalized racism.
Everyone has it.
Everyone has it because that's what we grow up in, that's the environment that we grow up in,
I
and
shy
so
away
we
from
have
the
to
word
work to
racist in that
deconstruct it.
context, so it's more so just bias. You're biased against
See,
other
but you
people, and
shouldn't shy
racial
away
no, because
from
racial bias
calling
might be
things
a part
out.
of it, but it's not just racism. Because I feel like that's an umbrella term that gets thrown around a lot to just say people have
Okay,
problems with other people. Like, bro, just say biased if you want to encompass everything. Otherwise,
so
actually break it down to what your issues are.
okay, so I can see why that would be an issue, because then you might be diminishing what like very aggressive racism is,
Yeah.
but at the same time you might also be enabling other people to like do microaggressions and like have like just these underlying tendencies that go unchecked because they feel like, yeah, no, I'm not racist, I just, you know,
Mhm.
I'm just, I just don't want my kids dating black people, and then it's like, oh fuck,
Yeah.
you know, like I think a lot of people in the Hispanic Latinx community will be like, yeah, no, I'm not racist, how can I be racist? And I mean, realistically, like people of color, so like yes, that's prejudice, uh but like they will say like, no, I'm not, I have nothing against them, I just don't want my kids to marry into like Black families.
Right.
Racism is the institution. I think we need to say it more. I think people are too defensive. Yeah, I think people are too defensive against the word. Like, I think when you imply like there's institutional racism that like we as a society propagate. If we didn't propagate it, then it would no longer exist, right?
Mm-hmm.
We propagate it, and if we don't aggressively call it out, we're kind of like being bystanders, or allowing it to like continue existing,
Right.
which is
But
damaging.
to me, I think the proper terminology matters because some people like grow up a certain way and they don't know, they genuinely don't comprehend the concept of not being racist because they don't know the why, bro, because no one was there to teach
Being
them.
anti-racist.
And you can say that like it's not my job to teach you or anything, but if you're going to take that angle, how can you expect that they're going to teach themselves if they're so caught up in their ways that they've never realized that they're in the wrong? Like, there has to be give and take, and like that sucks and it's annoying and it's frustrating and it's a burden that shouldn't be placed upon anyone, but that's life. You have to learn through other people because otherwise, like, there's no way of knowing something. You have to be willing to teach the same way you have to be willing to learn, and the proper terminology can help with that, especially to people who are new to the concept of being like quote unquote woke, which is, I guess, the discourse that we have going on right now worldwide. But
It's did I can't hear you.
I was I thought you were gonna say something.
Oh no, okay. I was like, did she cut out or
No, it looked
something?
like
And
you were
I'm
about to
still looking at
speak.
the other screen, and you're still talking on that screen. So I'm like, oh fuck,
Oh my god. So audio is real time, screen is delayed by some
No,
seconds.
I totally I know, like in my head logically I know, but
Chat, when
my
I
big dumb
clap,
brain
say
just
something
goes.
in the comments so that we can time how long the delay is.
Oh,
We're at 5 seconds.
damn, that's a long ass delay. Holy shit.
I think
It's
it's
still not
15
happening.
on YouTube then. Twitch I know is 5 desktop, 15 mobile.
Yeah, right there. Okay, wow.
Yeah. It's
That
like,
is a long
it's
time.
crazy, but anyway.
We're in a very technologically advanced era where everything is a Google search away. And that's also a very valid point. I think that at this point,
Hi,
if people are
Wilmer.
ignorant to things, they're being purposely ignorant to things, you know?
Yeah, but they don't have, they're not, it's not that people are ignorant to it. They don't realize that they need to look this up. Like, they genuinely don't have any, like, flag in their way telling them, hey, man, you're wrong. Go look this up. Like I said, it's an
Okay, okay.
unfair burden to place upon the marginalized communities, but we're the ones that know because we're the ones that feel it.
But people have done the teaching already and have made it readily available. I think that's what Charlie's trying to say is that
Yeah.
like the information has been disseminated so much, it's out there. Like, if you want to actively be anti-racist, I mean, there's this whole like there's a Google Doc that I that I opened up a while ago about like being anti-racist, and it's for white people. It's like, white people I know, because in this moment there's all this stuff going on, like, and if you really want to be anti-racist, like, here's stuff for you to read. And I think sometimes people are just so lazy, like they don't want to even read, you know?
Yeah.
And that's just it's
It's
just
a
bullshit. Like, at
far
that point it's
bigger.
like you're
Yeah, no, I'm not saying everyone's like willing to make that change. I'm saying not everyone knows that they have to make that change. It sucks, but that's how people are.
true facts.
What would you say?
All right, what you got for me next?
Well, I was gonna say, what would you say has been your experience like past that? Not about that topic, but like what else has shaped like how you think? Because like clearly you've like been very firm in your beliefs. Like again, going back to formative years, what else do you think has impacted your path and your trajectory into becoming the person we see on screen today?
Firm in my beliefs, man. That sounds like a compliment. I feel like I've been as firm as I could be, and then sometimes I fuck up. I don't
Which is
want to
called
like
being a
be like
person. That's called being
I'm a
human.
super leftist, amazing, never done a racist thing in my life, never been sexist in my life. No, I think, especially with sexism, I think sexism is one of the things that I struggle with the most, because I'm a man, and like, fuck, like, we get everything in life, and it's just so easy. And I think the easier it is, the less willing you are to like do the hard learning and to like change things. And like, the more I learn too, the more I look back and I cringe at like some shit that I've done or shit that I've said, and like, I'm just like, woo, FYI, I'd be willing to come on the show. I just worry about getting yelled at by my family or
We'll
talking to
figure it out,
someone too
amen.
late at night. Honestly,
I've asked her to come on the
freshly
show
baked lies.
before. Shoot.
Wow. No,
Punta
but
y aparte,
like,
what were you saying?
like, yeah, sorry. Well, I get distracted too. I just can't look at so
All
many
right,
things
I'll
at the
handle
same
chat.
time.
You handle your speech.
No, I want to interact.
You
But
can
all right,
interact, but finish your sentence.
I think like I said, I like sometimes I cringe about things. But like you said, I'm also human, so I try to like give myself the best leftists are those who recognize they must do the hard learning and the self checking. Exactly, exactly. And I think also like I hate. I don't want to say I hate cancel culture because like I think there's validity to like holding people accountable, and it's important that we do so. At the same time, though, when somebody is a leftist and wants to learn and all
Let me
that
cut you off
stuff,
for 1
is
second
like
to clarify. I
shitting on
wanted
them.
Amen and Tara to debate capitalism. I did not want you to argue for capitalism because your stance is very much against it.
Yeah, fuck capitalism. What? Are
Yeah,
you
no.
serious?
This is
Dude,
not.
I could. Oh my god.
I have to said it on the show
Fucking.
before. It's not my favorite.
I don't have it
form.
up there anymore because I let my friend have it. But
Mhm.
oh, I have another copy. I have 2 copies. But of course I got 2 copies.
Of course you did. Oh
you
my
gotta
god.
decimate the good information.
Put that away, bro. You're gonna get my show canceled. YouTube is very much a capitalist company.
Fuck YouTube too. And
As you
Netflix.
say on my YouTube channel.
There's
Cancel
I was
culture.
watching a while ago on Netflix. I totally got sidetracked, by the way.
Yeah. I was gonna respond to Amen's comment, but you were gonna mention something about
Exactly.
cancel
Eamon's
culture.
comment. It's called consequences. You know, it's called consequences and holding people accountable for the shit that they do. And if you don't like it, it's like there's a reason why you don't like it. And yet at the same time, I also am a big proponent of the fact that people can learn and change. And that we should be open to like helping people grow. And because my big thing is like I mentor a lot of younger guys, right? And they come into like Freedom U, and the things that come out of their mouth, holy fuck, man, they're talking about females and hoes and bitches and I don't know what. And like I, as a man, it's like you can't just let them say those things, you know, because you are responsible as a man for checking other men and like teaching them and helping them like be better and be different. But if I aggress them for what they've said, they move further from trying to be better, especially as as young men of color who have been socialized in this society. It's kind of hard to blame them for the things that they say when like this is all we hear and all we're sold and all we buy or all we can really buy. And so I have to softly encourage them to do the learning. And then they leave Freedom and I hear the things they say once they leave, and it's really nice to watch that growth.
Exactly.
And so a lot of a big thing I tell people a lot is like meet people where they are, you know, especially if they want to do the growth. Like if they're a racist and they're like, I love being a racist, I hate people of color, like I wish like genocide would happen. Like no, fuck
like,
them.
All right,
like
cool,
I'm all
walk
for
off
like
a cliff,
violent
bye.
revolution, like grab your Kalashnikov, let's fucking go.
Please do not get my show canceled.
But when it comes to people, I think especially my thing is with the bourgeois people who are racist, because they have the funds, the money, the environment where they can do all this, like they have access to all this knowledge and like they have all the time in the world to do so, right? Dumb, racist, white, rural people from what is that place called, the Appalachia or whatever, like to a certain extent it's like it's understandable because of the environment where they grew up. It's still their responsibility to learn. But as a leftist, I my approach to them would not be initially aggressive.
Right.
It would be like, look, you're struggling. What are the things that you're mad at? I hate that I don't have a job. I hate
you
that,
have to
like,
pinpoint the source of that frustration.
Yeah, like all these things. And then I'm like, why are you blaming this on black people and immigrants and the Jews and this, that, or the other? And
when there's someone
like,
actively
really,
keeping you down.
Here's all
like,
the
bro,
reasons why
the address of the people that are making your life miserable are on Google.
Wait, I gotta read what Eamon says because like high key. All right.
I've mentioned you and Eamon to each other before because y'all remind me a lot.
You really did?
Yeah, I have.
You want to say, bro? You my twin. I
Okay,
love
while
you.
you read chat, let me
Okay.
speak on cancel culture because this goes back to what I said about using the proper terminology. Because the phrase cancel culture has been twisted because it's been overused by everyone, right? Cancel culture doesn't apply to when people deserve actual
Restorative
consequences
justice.
like active racist, etc., bro. Like, cancel culture is telling someone, you're wrong and I'm never going to speak to you ever again. Because you can do that, great. But what's going to stop them from continuing to believe that? It's like you said, it's about like helping people change and grow and learn and become better and meeting them where they are, because cancel culture doesn't give the person a chance to change, and instead it fills them more with like resentment and spite, which is going to make that escalate. And you can't you can't expect someone to change if they don't know they need to change, because there's been no one to tell them. And cancel culture to me is people telling them, you're stupid, you're wrong, go away, we don't want you here, canceled, like you're canceled, like you're cutting them off from the people, the very people, I guess you could say, that they need around them in order to become better, in order to be decent human beings.
I want to say, beyond like educating people who are like at ground zero, like among leftists, a big thing that I appreciate, which you don't see much on the internet, like internet communists are fucking like for the most part are just like really fucking aggro and like ridiculous, and
Mm-hmm.
a lot of them are like white dudes who are like, yeah, I want to have a revolution. And it's like, dude, you have no idea the price in blood that you, not you, will pay,
Yeah.
but that like poor working class people will pay. And it's like, yes, I want one too, but we have to like think about how many of us will die.
It's performative
And
versus practical change.
exactly, but beyond that, like among true leftists, like in organizations, when you're on the ground and when you meet people like physically in person, the concept of self-critiquing is really important, because instead of being like, I'm about to shit on you so hard and like go in on you
Yeah.
because you said something that was like not as woke as I think you should be,
Mm-hmm.
you're like, look, what you said, it's like it was damaging either to me or to like a community that we should be protective of and that we care about.
Right.
Like, you need to take some time to self-crit, I think.
Yeah.
And that says two things. It says that I respect you enough as a leftist that I know that you have enough knowledge inside your head that you can go home on your own and really think on what you've said and come to the correct conclusion. I trust in you as my comrade, as my partner in the movement, as my friend,
Mm-hmm.
and that like, and at the same time you're checking somebody or like correcting something negative that they've done.
Right.
uh, and I think self-criting, like sometimes people have to tell you that you need to self-crit, because like if you have an identity where you are privileged, like as a man myself,
Right.
it's sometimes it can be difficult to see where you've done wrong,
Because
right?
you don't want to
But a
let
lot of
go of that
times,
like standpoint that you've reached.
exactly, but a lot of times, like I think we should constantly crit, like every so
Yeah.
often, just be more introspective and think like, what have I been doing, what have I been saying, like is this the right thing to say, like maybe this is weird, maybe this is shady, who else have I heard say things like this, are they the kind of person that like I would
Hi,
respect? And
Theo.
then just think more on it. Hey Theo,
Like,
I love you.
not to get copy striked by Michael Jackson's estate, but like you really do
Restorative
have to
justice.
be the man in the mirror. Take a look at yourself and make a change. But like, jokes aside, obviously, like that's really important what you said, because at the end of the day, you're the one that makes that decision for you, and that's why I think cancel culture is counterproductive. And to overuse the phrase and use it for things that actually matter is also harmful, because you're just kind of casting all issues aside, even if it's people arguing over a Starbucks cup not having Christmas on it, or active KKK members. Like, you can't lump those people together. That differentiation is important because there are different levels of toxicity.
Low key, I just want to say that like I kind of missed a little bit of what you said because I was reading the chat.
That's fine. It'll stay commemorated by
But I heard
YouTube
I heard
forever.
different levels of toxicity, which was like the last thing you said, and I think that, yeah, that's true. It's like every aggression is not the same, like
Yeah.
saying I want genocide is not the same thing
Yeah.
as like I slipped up and like committed a microaggression,
Right.
and like now I got a self-crit. But
So
like if somebody's like advocating genocide, you can't tell them to self-crit because they're
exactly.
obviously like completely for it. And like those are the kind of people that
And
you need to shut down
that's why
100%.
like cancel culture can apply to like your little internet drama in the corner of the world. That phrase doesn't apply to actual issues, bro. Like, not to quote a Kardashian, but like Kim, there are people that are dying. Like there's stuff that actually matters, you know? Like you have to
Yeah.
pick very actively pick your battles. And some arguments just aren't worth having. Like, for example, we've spent I don't know how long talking about cancel culture now. Does that matter?
I don't know why we're talking about cancel culture now. Like, we went
Tangents.
from religion and labeling and talking about the Communist Manifesto.
Formative years, formative beliefs. We're talking more about like what we think than what shaped that. Although I think it's all
Something
connected,
that
kind of.
something
Thanks,
that
Theo.
Eamon
I
said
spent a long time on
earlier
it.
about the best leftism comes from the struggling class. I
Yeah.
think, and you're saying formative years. I think honestly, yeah, like a lot of my principles about like treating people justly and equitably
Yeah.
were born from like the absolute poverty that I was raised in. And
Amen. I
like
think it
I
is going
think
to
when
be
I
a
was
2 hour
young,
show.
Jesus Christ. Oh yeah, holy fuck, it's almost midnight. I don't know if it's gonna be a 2 hour show. I wake up at 7 a.m.
Amen. It's going to be a 1 hour show, and you
But
take what you can get.
I'm sorry, man. I appreciate you though. Yeah, your all your insights are like just hitting the like you're booming. But like what Eamon was saying is like uh a lot of good theory, or no, you know what? Okay, at Freedom we read theory, right?
Yeah.
And theory becomes or is ingrained in you so much harder when it's not just something you read in a book, but as you're reading the book, you're like, oh fuck, I'm living this. And like I grew up moving from basement to trailer homes to single rooms. There was four of us in one room like multiple times. And I think like just that sensation of like not having, and my mother doing everything she could in her power to like work and provide for us, and then seeing people who just like their parents just fucking chilled at home and like lived off
Right.
investments. And like because we moved so much, I got to like experience befriending or knowing a lot of different people. And at some points we moved to areas where like we lived in like the minority section that was like the that had been blipped into the white like school zone or something,
Yeah.
so that like the school wouldn't be like, why is your school so white and y'all are racist.
Yeah.
So like we were like the token kids of color. And when we moved into those environments, I saw like people whose parents like didn't do shit, just like stayed at home and like lived off of their
Right.
dividends. And I'm like, my mother works 10 times 100 times harder than both your parents together,
Right.
and both your parents together didn't do anything for what they had. Like this is all hereditary. And I thought that the foundation of this country was like, we don't want kings, we don't want like that kind of transference of power, right? But hegemony is crazy, and like it adjusts to whatever the current system is and
Yeah.
tries to control the power, which is why a lot of like communist countries in the past have like had hard times, because like even though the principles and the theory is there, like people in power
There's always going to be
have the
one,
capacity to stay in power.
and there's always
so
going to
that
want to be
makes it
someone
really
that wants
difficult.
to stay in power and that wants to rise to power. That's why there's no real like 100%
Okay,
fix. It's gonna change.
I have a whole nother like from a psychological standpoint, like capitalism is crazy because like our communities, our society was built on the concept of like, if we come together, compared to every other animal, we're shit. You know, like
Yeah.
our eyes are not as good as a hawk. We don't have fucking fangs. We don't have claws. We don't have, our mandible strength is shit. Like we're not the biggest. We're also not the smallest. We're not good at
Said mandible
camouflaging. The sun
strength.
kills us. Like we're just shit compared to every other animal, right? The only thing we really have is our brains. And like with our brains, we're like, hey, let's fucking come together, develop language, and like thrive, right?
Yeah.
At some point, from a psychological standpoint, psychopaths mutated from like the normal
Right.
human concept of like, let's all work together to benefit one another.
Mhm.
And if you think about like psychopathy rates in normal society, I don't remember exactly, I don't want to quote something wrong because I'm on
Right.
video and like people are gonna like roast me for not
All
saying
right,
the right number.
disclaimer.
But
I've said this on the show before. Don't
like,
take anything we say at face value. Do your own research.
okay, I think it's like at 1% or something. But when you gather like a group of CEOs or Fortune 500 company like founders or something, their percentage rate is like at 25%. Like every 4 people, there's one psychopath. And it really says something about capitalism, that it elevates people who don't have empathy for others, who disregard the feelings of others. And I think that to become a billionaire or even a millionaire in this society, like you really have to have a certain degree of disregard for the well-being, health, and safety of other people.
Right.
And that's just like, I think that that system is shit, you know?
Yeah, and something
Like,
you said earlier kind of makes sense, like as you're speaking. You said you grew up moving from place to place, meeting people of like all different types and walks of life, and I think that genuinely does help shape you because you've met people of like literally any and all standings, of any and all backgrounds, and you kind of get to see a little bit of how they live and why they live. And I'll second that as well because my family's lived a really good life, a really bad life. I've grown up and I've been friends with and I've known people who again really good really bad life etc. And to have all of those different like perspectives, it helps you kind of understand why people are going to think the way they think. And like obviously like psychology is a whole career dedicated to it, right? The brain understanding itself.
I
But
love that shit.
I think that's super important. And like I hate buzzwords, dude. Like I care a lot about terminology and using proper phrasing because it matters. But like you do need to like leave your echo chamber and stop talking to people who already agree with you because if you just kind of stay stuck in your own, and I'm not saying this to you obviously or you the listeners, you is a very general like concept right now. If you only stay,
People should not stay in their echo
yeah,
chambers.
like if people are to stay within like their own belief system forever, like how are you going to know whether or not you're doing something that's wrong, right? Like, and if you're so used to everyone telling you you're like the elite being, this is how everyone should think, this is the proper ideas to have, this is the way to think, I'm gonna write a whole book about it. Like
Cheers, Charlie.
if you're gonna stay within that, the first time you like are hit with pushback, you're gonna be like, ah, nah, dude, you're wrong. You're probably biased against everyone, and you're selfish, and you're a psychopath, etc. Goodbye.
And I think
Cancelled.
what you're saying
Cancelled.
is really important because I was watching this video on YouTube a while ago. It's like a fucking 45-minute video, but I think it's important for people to watch it. But it's like the outright playbook or something, or how the outright like I can't read the comment right now. I'm sorry, Amen. But how the outright like just pulls people from being like conservative because like I want to have a family and a wife and blah blah, which like nobody can blame you for, but you shouldn't keep people from having their kind of like whatever they want,
Right.
and it pulls them into like a crazy direction, and like suddenly they're red pilled and then black pilled and like all this other shit, and
Yeah.
like then they're like they hate everybody. But one of the key concepts is that it's like a cult where like they separate you from everybody else and put you in this little echo chamber with where everything like fucked up is funny and everything that is like good and kind and treats people with empathy is like weak and soy boy shit that like you
Yeah.
get clowned on for. And that's just a tool for manipulating the masses or for manipulating groups
Yeah.
of people. And the cults do it all the time. It's like they tell you you can't talk to your friends, you can't talk to your family, you can't talk to anybody,
Yeah.
you can only talk to people in the cult. And the alt-right does that like incredibly, and I think that that's what breeds this kind of like these crazy ideas because all they get is encouragement. And like I think I don't know if the left does that. In my
Oh,
experience,
dude.
I think no.
Yes.
I want to say no, because in my experience, like I'm involved in leftist circles, but I also read and try to like look at other things, which is the reason why I know about red pilled and
Yeah.
black pilled and
It's
all this
like you said,
fucking
it's about
shit because
self-critique.
yeah, because I want to know. Like I believe these things strongly, and I believe I believe in human rights. I believe that people should like be respected and treated with dignity, and like nobody should be fucking murdered for being who they are and they can't help it.
Yeah.
But I'm like, why do people believe the opposite of these things so strongly?
Why
And
is
I
the
and I
exact question
want
you
to
need to
know.
ask.
Yeah, and so I go and I look, and I think that that's not something that people in like the alt-right or the far right are encouraged to do at all. Like it's just like this is fact and everything else is alternative news, which is fucking ridiculous because
Yeah.
most of the shit that they peddle is like either like myopic bullshit or like things that aren't understanding the whole concept.
It's all got
Like
no
you
facts
hear a
to
lot
back it
too
up. Like there's no
that
statistics.
or like even when they use statistics, like I said, they're myopic, right? They lack
They're
nuance.
twisted,
Like
yeah.
people talk about, I think on the right, there's a big fucking dumbass talking point about black people, about like 13% or something like that, where like black people are like 50% of the incarcerated people, but they only make up 13% of the population. And they're
Oh,
like, yeah,
right.
black
Yeah,
people
yeah.
inherently
But like, look at
commit
that
more crimes.
statistic per
And it's like,
million, and then you see
not
something
no,
different.
no. It's not even about that. It's like you're not understanding the nuance behind that. Like, you're literally admitting that the United States polices and incarcerates black people at a higher rate, even though they're a lesser portion of the overall
Right.
population.
Oh, right. Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
even if black people are committing more crimes, like, you're not acknowledging the concept that like the United States has put them into these like situations of poverty where they're living in like really difficult, desperate situations where people are hungry, and when people are hungry, they steal. Like, I would fucking steal from
And again,
somebody.
it's about your formative
I have been
years, how your
I've been
circumstance
hungry
shapes you.
before. Yeah. And I like talking about my formative years. Like, I've been hungry before. I've been so hungry. Like, I consider like, man, I should fucking go out to the streets and just rob someone because I've had like no money because I have nothing to eat or something. And I think about that, and like, obviously I would never rob another like proletarian. I would never rob like another poor person. Like, fuck that. I think that shit is like the worst, most vile thing you can do.
Yeah.
But like a rich person, fuck yeah.
No.
Like, you're robbing us, you know, like every time that we go to work, the surplus value from the labor that we like input into the workforce is being robbed from us. Like, it's only right that we take back the things that we created. Like, people who make money off of speculating or like selling stock or all that shit, you're not doing anything. You're just guessing. You're gambling.
Oh, no,
and you're
for
making
sure.
millions.
Right.
Eat the rich. Hell yeah, Charlie. Drink to that.
There you go. But it's not like you're gonna go hold someone up at gunpoint because you saw them driving a Mercedes either. Okay,
no. I have this like underlying. No, I will say like a lot of people like lease cars and stuff because we're sold this idea that like your self-value, your value or self-worth is tied to like your belongings.
Yeah.
But like in the back of my head, I have this thing where when I drive, where like when like a beater pulls up to me and they want to merge in, I'm just like, going, homie. I know you got somewhere to go. You got like, you're struggling like I am, and like I want you to get to where you're going. But like, if it's like a bougie ass car, oh, fuck you, dude. I don't know you.
You're not going the same way anyway.
Get the fuck out of my
Drive
face.
the speed
Hit
limit.
me. Hit my shitty ass little Honda.
They got more money to pay in a lawsuit than you would.
Oh damn!
It's all
yeah,
gain.
I'd probably get fucked over.
I had a question that was going off of that, but I got distracted by the car analogy. It was still about like formative years, etc. Oh, okay. So if you, and this is going back to the concept
Hegemony,
of,
amen. That last comment. Sorry, they only have money because the system is built to reward them. That's
no,
hegemony.
yeah. So going back to self-critique, like you said, the alt-right is very like obviously like amen, I swear to God. A very like deliberate comparison, like you said, is like the alt-right using these statistics that kind of twist an argument like without realizing that they themselves are disproving their own argument, and like it's almost cultish, but you can apply that logic to anywhere on the whole political compass, right? Where
I don't know.
you can, because there's going to be people, even if you share the same belief, people are going to address it in a different way. And it goes back to making yourself inarguable with, like, make sure that what you're, like, speaking on has basis and has fact. Because if you're going to pretend to support a movement, but everything that you do actively destroys what it stands for, you're only harming your own cause.
Control, all right, delete.
Slow clap.
I love it.
That's a good point to mention that we've hit the hour mark. You said you have.
I feel like I'm sniffling a lot, and I just feel like Zizek right now.
Do you want to keep going, or do you want to call it a night?
Let's hit another, like, I don't know, 30 minutes or something. I'll let you know if I get tired. Or if I get shit on for being so fucking loud. I'm loud as shit, and I suck at like keeping, like, modulating the volume of my voice. So like my dad's probably like, what the fuck, dude?
I've got my room door closed, and I'm monitoring audio levels on here, and every time I speak like into the yellow, I'm like, oh, my dad.
Wait, is Charlie there at home with you?
Charlotte's in the living room, I think. She's not in my room.
She could just like literally comment, like just walk in and be like, "Also, I got something to say."
She could, but she's in the comments because she's my only
She's a real
moderator.
one. Bless.
Look at that little wrench beside her name, giving her too much
Damn.
power.
A hammer, sickle, wrench. I'm just kidding.
Swear to God.
Moderators of the world unite.
Yeah, I thought so. Where did this even? Oh, so this entire conversation stemmed from you mentioning that you'd had like very insightful, enlightening interactions, which kind of begged the question of our formative years because you had one conversation that spawned like this entire past hour of discussion, right? And in that conversation, you mentioned that you'd been like looking back at like everything you've been through and how it's gotten you to the point where you are.
Oh yeah, yeah. I'm not drunk enough to like
No, I'm not saying you
just
have to
like
delve into
ball
it, but
over it right now. No, I'm
no,
just kidding. No, no. But I
it
will say,
kind of
like, I
just
think,
just to encapsulate everything that we've mentioned, like it's crazy because even that right there leading to this, like your experiences have like very long lasting effects.
yeah, yeah. No, I think like I don't like to look into my childhood because it was painful. It was difficult. I think that there's like one of our students for our essay writing class for college essay applications wrote, "Oh no, the stream stopped for 5 seconds." Okay,
Um,
okay, it's
I think you
okay.
can skip back into Amen, otherwise it'll probably render within like an hour of us going offline if you want to rewatch it.
Bless. Just keep track of what time it was or something. I guess I don't know,
You're
so
at
that like you know where
uh
what timestamp to go back.
you're at like a minute or hour 3 minutes 50 seconds or so. Amen.
Yeah. So I was saying one of our students wrote this beautiful essay about like his first day in the United States and going to like high school because he came as an older uh, kid, and he mentioned one thing about like how he didn't speak Spanish or English. He spoke like a native tongue from his home country,
Oh wow.
uh, and like there was just nobody to help him. And I think at one point he was like, and I kind of hid instead of going to wherever I was supposed to go. Like I just hid because I didn't know what was going on or what I was supposed to do. And it just threw me back to like being in first grade, and my parents didn't know about like free lunch or anything like that. And I like my class lined up to go to lunch, and I knew I didn't have money, and I had gone before a couple days, and like a day two went by, and they were like, "All right, we're gonna give you the lunch," and then later on they were like, "Look, we're gonna have to take it from you, throw it away, and give you like a bullshit like sandwich and like water or something," and which is dumb because like they already served it and then they threw it away. Capitalism again, just throwing away
Right.
food when there's hungry people. But I was embarrassed because I was poor and I didn't know what to do, and I purposely waited for like the back of the line, and then the whole class started walking out, and as people were leaving I made sure nobody saw me, and I went and I hid in like in a corner where the teacher couldn't see me. And I just remember I was a little kid, and how heavy that felt.
Mhm.
And my teacher like turned off the lights, she closed the door, and I sat there for like however long lunch was. I just remember how hungry I was and how embarrassed I was and how lonely I felt, and like all these things, all these emotions that just like I don't like to think about because they hurt. They hurt a lot
Yeah.
in the moment, and they hurt a lot to think back on. And I think they hurt even more when I think of the little kid that I was and how much help I needed and how much like uh how indefensive I was, like how I didn't have anybody to really look after me, and it's just painful. And I have
No.
a picture of myself. I got an award like in January of a certain year for being like the reader of the month, and
Yeah.
they take you and you hold up like or something, like you just stand there and they take a picture of you and they like reader of the month. And every time I look at the picture I want to fucking cry because I just see this little boy who like just doesn't really have anything. Nobody get. I always tell people like when I was poor and lived in low income neighborhoods, nobody gave a fuck about us ever.
Mhm.
Nobody gave a shit about us. Like People were just there for their paycheck. No, there was no systems for support. There was nothing for us, and so many of like the little kids that I knew back then, just like the lives they're living now, it's just painful to think about. And like, I don't know. I don't even know. I didn't do anything special to like end up in college really or anything like that. I don't even know how the fuck I'm not like out in the streets somewhere
Bro,
or
the
dead
thing
or
that you did
something.
was try, and like that's literally what
But
matters.
I
Like,
feel so cheap because so
it's
many of
not
my
though.
friends
It's
tried too, you
not.
know? No, 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 no. I don't because it feels like I'm like saying that feels like I'm shitting on all the other kids who were there who didn't like end up in a similar situation to me, saying that they didn't try. And they did, you know?
Yeah,
I just got lucky. I just was like privileged enough that like people took pity on me and helped me in some kind of way, you know?
yeah,
And like I can recognize like I know I'm brown, but I'm not like the darkest. I have
right.
green eyes. Like people like I learned to speak English very eloquently and like my accent went away and all this stuff. So I learned to code switch in certain environments and like right now there's this white family that houses me when I'm in when I have to go to college and like all this stuff. So you know like I'm palatable to like the like to white people I guess in general.
Sure.
And and yeah, the way they used to shame you in front of the entire class when you had lunch, that was what was the reason. Yeah, that shit sucks. But like I said, you know, like I think people say like nobody makes it on their own, and that's 100% true. And I
Facts.
think that like and also there's an embarrassing aspect of like having to like sell yourself out in certain spaces or in certain ways to really like get to where you're trying to get to.
But the
And
thing is, you acknowledge that and you very actively do what you can to try to give back. Like, your involvement with freedom alone, I think, speaks to that. And that's something that I was going to point out. Like, you had not two paths, it's never that, like, direct, right? But you had different paths you could have taken, like, knowing how much you struggled, how much you suffered. Like you said, there's kids that grow up, like, around Narcos, and that's what they want to do because to them, that's the way out. You knew about this, right? You had all of these paths you could have taken, and you decided to take the one where you work with an organization that gives back to people who are as unfortunate as you were, if not worse or better. There's different levels of it, and you've taken every step forward that you've been able to take, and found a way to kind of use that to self-critique and to figure out what you can do for someone else that's in that situation, and even being aware that there are people that are in that situation just as bad as you had it, or better or worse, like
there were
that
kids,
opens your mind
Carla,
towards it.
that I remember this kid specifically who was like I was skinny and small, and this kid was skinnier than me and smaller than me, but he was also smarter than me by a lot,
Hmm.
so much. But he was black, and that was the distinguishing factor.
Right.
And so like I would not say that like it's all because I tried so hard. Like other people tried just as hard, if not harder, and struggle even more. And like so like it in part it was entirely like a lot of like privilege, yes. Uh, and then I will say though that like my work now at Freedom U is in large part informed because of the way that I struggled, because I felt so unsupported, because there was nobody there for me who really gave a fuck. And
Hmm.
like I care because I see myself in these young people, and I want to do what I can to like serve them and help guide them and tell them all the things that I did wrong and all the things that I did right and all the things that helped me and how to access certain resources. And so like my work to me is like I'm passionate about it and it's beautiful and I love to do it and it's rewarding to see your students succeed and do wonderful things.
Right.
Um, so that's why I'm at Freedom. Really, it's a wonderful work environment too, and I love it.
For sure.
But you know,
It
I
makes
just I
sense,
think a lot
dude.
about things.
See, and I've I don't know if I can say everyone, but I know a lot of people go through the phase where they resent all of their hardships and they hate like the place that created it for them. And I can say I fell into this for a while as well. Like, I hated my hometown. I didn't like it here. I was like, there were people that helped me, sure, but what about everyone that didn't? What about everyone that purposefully tried to be a roadblock in my way? Like, why would I do anything for them? And now, years later, I can look back and be like, bro, whatever struggles they had going on that were that bad that they felt the need to project that onto another innocent child, like, why, dude? Like, what led you to that point? What led you to that decision? And so now, instead of being like, bro, I can't wait to get out of here, I hate it here, I'm like, I can't wait to get out of here so I can find a way to kind of give back. And who am I to be the town's savior, right? But like, to be just another positive, I guess, pinpoint in this city. Because like, if I struggled
I
here,
want to
and I
comment
know
on that
other people, yeah, but
later.
if I know I struggled here and other people struggled here, why would I trash? And this kind of ties to, I wanted to mention something about cancel culture before, but like, if the people that feel attacked are the ones that leave, you're just leaving all of the negative people that don't care about the feedback or the backlash to stay in that space and dominate that space, right? So if I leave just another bitter, resentful person that hates their hometown, what's going to become of this place when everyone decides to leave and only the people that are bitter or resentful are the ones that stay, right? It's just going to crumble into nothing, if not chaos. So instead, now my mindset has shifted into one that's like, what can I do to help? What can I do to better this so no one else has to go through what I went through?
I want to comment a little bit on the whole savior thing, because I think that, like, as a kid going through all those hardships, seeing all those things, one of the things, and I think there's a quote too about it, it's like it's like something about there's something seriously fucked up, or something about like uh oppressed or marginalized people, their goal being to be the the oppressor, or like their goal being to be like the person on top,
Mm-hmm.
because and the argument is usually like, I'm poor and like I want to help my community, so I want to become a billionaire so that I can like give my people money and all that stuff. And and like, and that concept, I think it's like it's founded in a good philosophy of wanting to help people. But then I started doing all this learning and all this like understanding things. Is like, wow, you really can't become a billionaire or a millionaire without really like harming so many people.
Yep.
And I thought more and more about it, and I was like, and then I realized how egotistical it was to believe that it was my responsibility, or that, or my duty as an individual
Right.
to save like my community. And like, that's not good leftist ideals. I think I grew out of that. Like, I wanna be a billionaire so I can help my people. Like, no, I can help my people without being a billionaire. It's mutual support, mutual aid, like helping
Right.
one another, giving to one another. Like, I don't have to make all this money. I just have to teach the principles to others, so that when the time comes, we can all be there for each other.
It
And it's
goes
not
back to
like
meeting people where they
I'm the
are.
savior. Yeah, but it's like it's not like I'm the savior, or like I did all this beautiful things for my community and now there's a building named after me or some bullshit like that.
Right.
It's like, no, my responsibility is to teach like the members of my community who need the guidance,
Yeah.
to help themselves and to help each other, and in that way change the world. And you really can have such a much bigger impact in that way. And like, when my students go off to like wherever they go, I am grateful that like I taught them, or like that I they gave me the opportunity to like teach them the things that I could teach them. Um, because I know that like, if their perspective on women changed, if their perspective on like black people changed, if their perspective on any number of issues changed, the way they interact with the world will be different, and there will be a lot of harm that they won't do, and there
Right.
will be a lot of good that they will do. And it's a beautiful thing, and it's the simplest way to change the world, to like not have to like in envelop yourself in power and stand and be like the most mighty like thing. And like, no, power to the people always.
Mm-hmm.
And 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 in that way, like, I watch kids go off and they do incredible things, and I'm like, that was born from my teachers who taught me and me teaching them. And it's a legacy of
Yeah.
good leftist principles that are like bearing fruit later on down the line, things that I might not ever even benefit from, but that are benefiting the world as a whole. And if you really love the world, it's not about you becoming a millionaire, it's about the world benefiting and being a better place. Because ultimately, like, a classless, moneyless, stateless society is like a beautiful thing that we could all come together and support each other without worrying about like who's making how much money or what. I haven't been reading comments. I'm sorry,
No,
guys.
it's
Let me see how you
Eamon
go down.
being thwarted by autocorrect, but also agreeing with you and everything you were saying. But there's different tracks for it, right? Because what you're saying would be fantastic if everyone started neutral at zero, but where we are in the world has a lot more to do with people changing and helping. Because if you're the person that's gonna go and learn and come back and teach, great, but you gotta admit financial help would, not be turned away either. And so this is where you can turn to, like, because there's some people that do it, right? Like, what's the guy on Twitter, Polche, the one that like inherited like all this money and now he just does giveaways every single day, like, just because he has the money to do it, like that's what he does. And then you also have like Cash
There's a
App.
certain aspect though of like egotism to it though,
No,
because
there
it's
is,
like now everybody knows this one individual as like, oh my god, he's so cool, he's so nice, and it's like it's
but
not
are you
about
gonna turn
you.
away the money though? Like, it's not about
Hell
him at all.
no,
But
I'm fucking
like,
poor. Are
the
you
boy's got
serious?
the money and he's willing to hand it out. Like, great, thank you for your service, money
Thanks,
please.
bourgeois bastard. I'll take
So like,
whatever
because
fucking
he
thing I can take from
inherited
the
it and he
bourgeoisie.
was like, well, I don't know why, my dad was holding on to all of this money, but let me give it back because I've seen people struggling, so here y'all go some help. So like, there's different tracks and different paths and ways for people to help, because even if one's individual experiences didn't shape them to be a certain way, knowing other people and getting to talk to people in other circles from different backgrounds will help you like realize like everyone will benefit a lot more if everyone was doing well. Like, you don't need someone to be struggling in order for you to succeed. And I think that's something that not everyone knows off the bat.
Sounds like you want to argue for soft capitalism, but
I'm
okay.
not arguing for soft capitalism. I'm saying this is where we are. This is the change that's coming. We're living
Humane
through the change.
capitalism.
No, it's not a
I
thing.
love that oxymoron. It's my favorite one because
I hate
I
it.
see fuckers on the internet
It's
say,
so
"Oh,
dumb, bro.
humane
There's
capitalism." It's
no
like
such
that's just
thing.
you can't have that. Like
There's no such
there's
thing.
you can't have a hierarchy of people where somebody's on top. Like, and that's the whole concept. Like, I want to become a billionaire so I can help people. It's
Yeah.
like when you become a billionaire, if everybody else also becomes a billionaire, then you're not really a billionaire because
Because
you're
you went
not
through
like
this whole
your
progress
money
of becoming a billionaire and
has
just
no
holding
value.
it. Yeah.
No, but like your money has no value, right? Because everybody else is a billionaire. But if you are truly a billionaire and other people aren't billionaires, then you're at the top of this pyramid, and the people at the bottom are still suffering.
That's what I'm saying.
Even if you
Someone
give
doesn't need to
everything
suffer
away,
for
like,
you to
oh,
succeed. And like, if that's your goal, you would never reach the point where you're a billionaire because you would always be giving back. Like, you
yeah,
wouldn't
yeah,
amass that wealth for yourself because you would genuinely always actively be helping.
yeah. And I think I will say because Eamon's comment just like reminded me to like tone my shit down a little bit. Like I am very critical of like even kind capitalists who like, because I mean our organization survives off of donations or like grants from other organization from like wealthy bourgeois people. uh I get fucking distracted. Fuck you, Streamlabs. I am enjoying the show. I'm
Hey,
fucking on
leave
it.
Streamlabs alone. I love my bots.
All right, sorry. uh but
Please
see, I
sponsor me,
lost my train of
Streamlabs.
thought. Do you remember what I was saying?
You said that something that Eamon
Oh,
said
I'm kind
sparked
of
you.
critical. Yeah. Uh, redistributing wealth is the tenet of socialist policy, and socialism is like a stepping stone towards like ultimately communist and like a moneyless, classless, stateless society.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think like I'm critical of it. I know it's a good thing. I think I should say it is a good thing for people to do, but I'm critical of it because I think that sometimes people see that and they're like, yeah, this is beautiful, and then let's stop here. And when you stop there, like FDR passed a bunch of wonderful policies that really stimulated the economy and helped people live better lives. But when you do that with humane capitalism, where you pass these policies to help people, hegemony slowly over time starts to degrade those things, and we see the degradation of
Right.
like the EPA and all these other organizations that are meant to like protect the environment and people and workers' rights and like marginalized groups and identities, Title IX, all this stuff. And like it slowly starts to get degraded because people did that. We're like, oh, we're living good. Let's leave it at that. And
Right.
you can't leave it at that. So
Because
like,
things
yes,
change. You
it's a
have to
good thing
adapt.
and it's a good stepping stone. So you should like acknowledge the goodness in it. But I think I'm critical because I want people to not forget the ultimate goal.
Yeah. Well, you have to address issues as they arise as well, because like you said, when you reach a good point, like it's really easy to be like, all right, we're comfortable here, let's stay here. And that's what this country did, and now look where we are again, right? People are suffering again. What was it wasn't a Great Recession 2008, right? Like we went through
Philanthropy is just
something
synthetic
again that
capitalism.
wasn't supposed to happen. Like this country said, this is the worst we ever lived and it can't happen
But
again.
Marx, and
We
it's funny
reached
because Marx predicted that shit like years ago. It's like,
because it's a
and people know
cycle.
it. Like
Because it's
every
a cycle.
like 4 to 7 years, there's a fucking recession because capitalism is inherently unsustainable, and people know that. And people talk about market corrections, like the market will correct you so hard. So you're admitting that like shit has to crash, so people will lose incredibly, so
Right.
that then you can start gaining again.
It's
Because
like you're
infinite growth in a
faking a
finite system
rise
is not
because
possible.
you caused the downfall. So now you want to like be like, "Hey, I fixed it." Like, bro, you broke it to begin with. Like that's why there needs to be consistent active change, like
Exactly.
always.
And that's why I don't believe in glorifying people like Bill Gates and all that stuff. Because yes, all the stuff like that, he's doing a lot of beautiful, wonderful things that are helping a lot of people. Yes, that's
Yeah,
good. But that's his responsibility as somebody who's taken so much from people, so
right.
much from working people, and like that's the least of what he owes us. That's a percentage of what he owes humanity.
Mm.
And so like I don't believe in glorifying these people. I think like we should say this is a good thing that's happening,
Yeah.
but it's only a part of the
Sure, it's not
process.
about glorifying, but it's also not about demonizing them either, because then again, like I said, that kind of leads not all people. Some people like
We
will
don't
see
demonize the bourgeoisie. They demonize themselves through their
that's yeah,
actions.
okay, listen though. What I'm saying is like you get people that take that criticism and they don't know how to receive it because they've never felt that because they've lived a really good privileged life and they've never had to suffer. And now they're suffering at hands of critique. So what's going to stop them from becoming resentful and being like, "All right, well I'm going to keep my millions and buy a seventh yacht and y'all can go fight
And that
over."
and that's why people say that violent revolution is inevitable, because these people will not kindly let go of all of their wealth and power. It Hegemony is a crazy strong thing that like always tries to regain power and centralize it with the people who are already powerful.
Mhm.
And so like even when they do all these things and then you start telling them and critiquing them, valid critiques which are important to make so that people don't get like stuck in like a cycle of like creating like things that help people and then degrading them, and then people are just back in the shitter, and
Yeah,
our minimum wage has been fucking 7.25 for all these years while inflation is growing in
exactly,
like rent is
exactly, yeah.
growing and all these things, etc. uh and so these people feel critiques and like, man, then fuck you guys, right?
You
And
know
but we
our
should
rent went
critique
up and
because
nothing
ultimately
changed?
like, well, so that's what I'm saying is
We
like
actually lost
we should
services
critique
when our
them.
rent went up. Trash. Sorry,
I'm
continue. I was just
sorry,
mad about it.
fuck that shit,
Continue. Anyway,
fuck your
sorry.
landlord. Landlords are leeches. Landlords don't fucking work, they live off of other people's works, but fuck
Whack,
that,
bro.
that's not what we're talking about right now. But
Like, bro,
ultimately,
come
and
replace
I
my
have family who
fridge.
are
You have the
landlords.
money for it.
All right, so the thing is like the critiques are very valid and necessary and they have to be made. And at the same time, exactly like you said, these people will receive the critiques, and because they've never struggled them, they will react negatively and further exploit and oppress the like
Mhm.
poor working class people. And the effect of that is violent revolution, because if you won't listen to us kindly and accept our critiques like as fucking human beings who are
Yeah.
demanding to be treated like human beings and not like fucking and I can't even say beasts of burden, because like fuck, we should treat animals justly too. But like as like bots or something. And I know you just defended that fucking bot, but like
Leave
whatever.
Streamlabs alone. I
uh,
love him. Or
but
it. I don't know. It's a robot.
throughout all that, ultimately, and that's what Marx was saying, is like ultimately it's the inevitability of the rise of the proletarian as a group of people who like fight for themselves and for each other because they love one another,
Yeah.
uh, and they understand each other's humanity and they want to protect one another. Like that's where it's coming from. So
Right.
I think that's why like that's the other, like we had been talking about like internet communists, and like the big thing is like a lot of them just like they want to LARP being revolutionaries, or like
Yeah.
they're excited by the idea of war, which is stupid.
A
Like
lot of it's
people fucking die.
performative, bro.
Wait,
Because
wait,
you
wait.
know, if it
Yeah, it's
came to war, they
performative.
would be the first
They
ones to
will
hide in
fucking
their mom's
cower in their
basement, bro.
goddamn like
Like,
mom's
calm
basement.
down.
Exactly. That's exactly what they're saying. But so that because they glorify violence and all these things, and like really truthfully, a good leftist doesn't want to do violence because violence is fun and beautiful and all these things, but because there is so much love for one another that. Sorry, I just heard a knock at my door. I think we're about to hit the 30-minute mark, so this might be it. I do have to wake up early, so I have
That's
to go.
all good, yeah.
But I am a working class proletarian.
We have gone on quite a tangent here.
Radical love, exactly. Because we love each other so much, I cannot sit idly by watching people be murdered by the state, by fucking police. I can't watch fucking kids and adults and anyone being fucking caged.
Right.
I can't watch like women being beat. 40% of police officers are domestic violence like abusers. They like beat their wives. Like women, the way they're treated by society. Like you can't love humanity and sit and watch those things and like idly just accept it. And that's the other thing. Like we will not make excuses for the terror. When it's our turn, we will not make excuses for the terror because we won't need excuses.
Sure.
We do it out of love for each other and for humanity.
Which is why, like, again, it's important to not generalize, use umbrella terms, speak very distinctly, right? Use proper terminology and acknowledge the good being done while also, like, being able to address what the issues are that need to be solved. Because if you push everyone into the same group, you're met with resentment, you're met with pushback, and no one progresses. And on the other side, if you don't address that anything is happening, it just continues to deteriorate into chaos. Like, you have
Cycles.
to be, and you have to be willing to
cycle
accept.
of capitalism.
And if you realize it, and you should, because like you said, self-critique, you have to be willing to admit that you yourself, like I'm pointing at you on the screen, or you in the chat, or me being me, right? Like, you have to be willing to accept that you may have fallen behind at some point. So address the situation, adapt, change, restructure your plan for life and activism, if you want to call it that.
Amen. Thank you.
Amen in the chat.
I just realized that. I was like, let it be so.
Amen.
Like,
it does, and if not, it'll be on the screen anyway. That's why I have a chat box. Although I just realized it's tiny. I don't know what's up with that. I'll fix that later. Like I said, it's a new look for the virtual studio, but I'll fix that later because that's what I'm doing right now. Yeah.
That's true too. We all have different roles.
Yeah.
All right, we gotta go. Thank you so much.
So thanks for hanging on this crazy tangent. Moral of the story
thank you for all your incredible insights. Like, wow.
I have mentioned y'all both to each other. Like, definitely. I have for sure said that. But yeah, thanks y'all for coming along on this journey. Like I said.
Real quick shout out, Yemi Cambrone painted that beautiful mural.
I want to meet her so bad.
It's a small version of the mural that like is
yeah.
And I know the Reporter-in-Chief Barack Obama, he's back there. It's the first painting I bought. I bought it when I was in high school, and I think now it's developed a new meaning for me. Like it's not like I recognize all the things that Obama did, but at the same time I recognize as a person of color, like everything he had to go through to get to the point where he was. In the same way, like when I was in high school, Chief Scott was in the Air Force. He was a black man who became a fucking chief.
Birds aren't real.
At a time where like that shit was unheard of. And like, even though fuck imperialist militarism, all that bullshit, like fuck that shit. But like, I can recognize the work that they put in and like my respects and admiration.
Acknowledge the good, address the bad.
Exactly.
We're all multifaceted individuals trying to figure out how to get through life the right way, if there is such a thing.
Ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yes. While you were talking, I showed off the hat that I made for Birds Aren't Real. The birds work for the birds. But,
yo, you made a hat that says that?
Haven't I shown it to you? I posted it. Wow, fake friend.
Wow.
Birds aren't real.
I don't even go on shit.
I have a sticker on my laptop for it too. That was my entire final film project, bro.
Yes.
People change, dude. That's what it comes down to.
We grow and we learn.
Yeah. That's literally it. Like I said, the show welcomes debate and discussion. I don't agree with everything everyone on the show says, but I like having the platform to have y'all talk about it because it interests me. Put that away.
I'm just encouraging learning.
So this episode has been brought to you by all right, signing off. I don't even know how to end this episode anymore, but we have hit an hour and a half, so Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Thanks for chatting. Everyone that says something, everyone that lurks. Thank you, Rafael, for agreeing to do the show. Welcome back to the studio. Hopefully you come back, even if it's not at the actual radio station because you're a traitor.
We didn't even
But
catch up. We didn't even catch up on like how my life has
we
been
did
since
it.
I
That's how
left.
we were gonna start. We had this structured so cleanly, but
I miss and love
immediately
everybody at
decided to
Eastern,
care.
and I support you guys 100%. And I wish and hope that all of you do incredible things throughout your life. So, gang.
I will pass the message on to them. All right, chat. Thanks again. See y'all next week, same time, same channel, new nonsense, new guest. Maybe. I don't know actually about that. I still need to confirm. And if not, I'll still have new conversations for you, and you guys in the chat can be the guests as usual. So,
Or you
without
can have me back on.
you can come back, of course. There's not that long left, dude. There's only like a few weeks before this is over. I do have the finale lined up, and I'm excited for it. The finale has been set and scheduled.
At the request of Amen.
I thought it was a good idea to have y'all meet, and I'm glad y'all got to interact.
Bless. Thank
All
you.
right.
I gotta go to sleep.
All right, bye y'all. Signing off. Farewell. Peace. All right, desktop audio is muted. Should be. My mic isn't muted. There we go. Hold
Okay,
on.
cool.